Good evening and welcome to the Legion Cantina. In today's episode, I'm going to be running through my predictions for what Grand Admiral Thrawn and Grand Moff Tarkin will look like in Star Wars Legion. So, I put a couple of polls out on the channel asking sort of what you guys thought the kind of points values roughly should be for both of these characters, and both of them came in sort of between 80 to 100 seemed to be the vibe. I've gone more towards the upper end for both of these so I've gone for 100 points for both of these characters. I think obviously there's justifications for putting them almost anywhere depending on the power level, and like I wouldn't fixate too much on the points values here. It's not really about like the balance necessarily in all of this. It's more about like the rules, the command cards, things like that. But I've put them both at 100 points, so kind of just above, your Krennics and your Veerses of the world, for instance. Yeah, but without further ado, let's get into it. So first one we talk about is Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now, quick note on this one: I'm not like super hot on the lore. Like, I watched Rebels, I watched Ahsoka. Like, I have a reasonable grasp of like what he was like in both of those shows. But if there's some deep lore that I've missed out on because it came in a novel or something, or is in Legends, like I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do all that research just for one video. But yeah, this is Thrawn, and I've kind of gone for like a more like super version of a typical Imperial support commander for Thrawn. So I think he has to have cunning. I think he absolutely has to have cunning. He's a cunning guy, and he's also getting exemplar because he's going to end up with some aims and some dodges. So he's a kind of a classic support commander in that sense. He's getting one step ahead because I think the entire reason one step ahead was created was probably with him in mind, bearing in mind like the development schedule. So yeah, I think he has to have one step ahead. I did briefly toy with the idea of like two steps ahead, where you get like two speed one moves with him, but I thought that might be a bit weird and possibly quite OP. So yeah, but definitely one step ahead was intended for him, and he's also getting ruthless because he's a pretty ruthless guy. So yeah, those are his kind of his main keywords. And then basically what I wanted with him is I didn't want him to have the kind of spotter stuff that Krennic and Veers have. I wanted to go with a different direction with both of these characters, with both Thrawn and Tarkin. And so rather than giving them spotter, I've given Thrawn independent dodge 2 and target 2. So basically you can kind of choose whether you want your Thrawn to be a bit more defensive or a bit more kind of like aggressive with those aims. And I thought it kind of suited Thrawn maybe a bit more than those other two because like he's a calculated guy, he's probably planning ahead and stuff like that. Getting those at the start of the turn I think maybe makes a bit more sense for Thrawn. So yeah, he will be capped at 2 dodges and 2 aims, but Krennic only gets spotter 1, Veers only gets spotter 2, and yes, you can get that spotter 3, but I think having those aims at the start of the turn is still really good. And then in terms of his weapons, he can kind of throw hands in melee. To be fair to him, like he's pretty decent. So maybe this should be 3 red, but just two red for now. And then yeah, 3 black, PS1. It's basically Leia's old blaster, but without the sharpshooter, and he's getting surge to crit to hit as well. So he's not like defenseless, but like I definitely for both of these, I didn't want the melee and their like attack to be like a major factor. A bit like with Leia or with Krennic or with like the support commanders. Basically, that shouldn't be like a key factor. In terms of health and courage, I think he deserves courage 3. Like he's fairly brave. Like I think there's I don't know how much the break point between 2 and 3. I don't know how well that's kind of addressed in game because like I think for me the one I've always had like a bugbear with for a while is Leia only being courage 2, and I feel like she does deserve to maybe go up to that courage 3. Like I think she deserves that step above like Krennic and Veers, for instance. I think the same for Thrawn. I think he deserves that step above those guys. But yeah, he's 5 health with red saves, no surges or anything. I think again this is pretty typical for a support commander. Like you see this on the super attacks and you see on Veers, for instance. So he's not going to go down like a gust of wind or something, but he's also not going to be like super nails and insanely tough. But moving over to his command cards, and I really went back and forth on these. Like these were like really interesting to design. I think there's so much cool space that you can access with Thrawn, and I think I don't know how well I've captured it here. Like I've given it my best shot, but yeah, definitely like if there's other ideas you have, put them in the comments below because I think for Thrawn, it's really hard to predict what they're going to look like. And I think the only real thing you can do is kind of go with the gist of what you're expecting to see. So his first command card is planning and preparation. And basically, when you're building a command card, treat this as though it has 3 pips. And essentially, no friendly units can receive an order on the turn you play this, not even Thrawn. So you give up order control, but you get a pass token, and you can choose not to use cunning, because I realized essentially this is just a really strong, well, should be a really strong turn 1 play for getting that extra pass token, because it turns out getting a pass token on turn 1 gives you another 10% win rate. But anyway, yeah, so basically I'm anticipating this being a turn 1 play. And you can also divulge it to get cash, dodge, aim, and surge, which means your opponent will know it's coming, which means they might then have an option to counterplay. Like if they know you're going to be playing this 4-pip most likely on turn 1, they can maybe take a bit of a different direction themselves, or they can opt to, just go for standing orders themselves and kind of just work it out that way. But yeah, essentially the idea for this is that obviously you give up that order control, but you get that pass token. I don't actually know how balanced this would be. Like, I don't think it would be crazy strong, because even if you had 2 commanders with improv, I think the lack of order control would still be quite crushing. But the potential, like I'm thinking about this with maybe darks, for instance, and stuff like that, you could really stack up some passes and kind of really delay your turn, and that is an interesting idea. But again, this would require some playtest and see how it goes. But yeah, basically Thrawn is giving up like orders on turn 1 in order to have time to like plan and prepare and get that extra pass token. So I think this is quite an interesting one, and I quite like this command card. Next one, your culture, art, and history. So he researches people and he kind of studies them to kind of understand what they're going to do. So in this way, he's going to have a look at your command cards. And this, you probably spot like the link to Callus's 2-pip, the ISP investigation one. And essentially what this is going to do is it orders 2 units, and it doesn't have any like effect on your units, but your opponent, at the end, after this command phase is complete, your opponent picks 2 of their remaining command cards, and they reveal them to you, and then basically you can pick one of those 2 that they have to play next turn. So what this is, I think the nice thing about this is that it's giving agency to both players. I did briefly look at like you randomize, so you just pick a random card from their hand, or 2 random cards, and then you pick one. But I thought that might be a bit of a feels bad for the opponent sometimes. So this is, they have an element of control because they can select which 2, but then you can pick kind of the worst one of those 2. There is a bit of a weird interaction where if you kill the character that has this command card, maybe they can't play it. So I think that would probably be an FAQ. I think in that case, maybe they can just play one as normal. But yeah, just to be clear, the idea of this one is, yeah, they would give you 2, and you can just pick which of the command cards you want them to play. Oh, yeah, I think this would be an interesting one. Again, a bit of a different spin on that kind of callous 2-pip of seeing what's in their hand. And then the one I like gave a sneak preview of, Architect of Their Own Destruction. Basically, this one is you play it down, and characters ordered, units ordered by this card will gain an aim, a dodge, or a surge, and you can kind of pick one each time. So you could stack 3 aims if you want to, or 2 dodges and aim, or whatever. Based on how many pips your opponent's command card has. So this might even be a good like turn 2 play, or maybe in the later game when they're running out of stuff. Like if they've only got standing orders left, this is great on those later turns. So yeah, I think this is maybe like the least Thrawn and maybe most generic of them, but I like it because it's like your opponent's kind of damaging themselves by picking their command card in some ways by giving you those aims and those dodges. So yeah, I think they're quite an interesting like breadth of command cards here, and I think it would give Thrawn some really nice tricks, like some early game, some mid game, and maybe even some late game with the Architect of Their Own Destruction. But yeah, that's Thrawn. Again, obviously, drop any comments, like ideas, in comments below. I'm not set on these, obviously, by a long way, but these are kind of the ideas I came up with. Moving over to Tarkin, and I've gone. I think, unfortunately, I've pigeonholed Tarkin a little bit, but I wanted to do something different again with Tarkin, again beyond that the sort of generic Imperial commander of like giving out the aims and stuff like that, because that's kind of, I feel like, the niche that's already been filled. But I also didn't want to go too far from it. Like I didn't want them to have like, strategize or loads of dodges, because I think Empire kind of built around that idea of like having quite a few aims and that gun line type thing. So I wanted Tarkin to fit into that without just doing the same things everybody else is. So he's pulling the strings. I initially didn't include this, but apparently there's been some stuff on some podcasts about pulling the strings coming back. So that's the reason it's been included here. Yeah, I think there's real potential for pulling the strings to be really good. And I think Tarkin is someone who deserves to have it. Possibly Thrawn could have it as well, to be fair, but I'd already given Thrawn quite a lot and I didn't want to go beyond like 5 or 6 keywords. He's also getting Observe 3, so again, this is not giving him the spotter stuff, but giving him something quite a little bit different. He's getting it as a free action. I think Observe as a whole action sometimes feels a bit bad, so giving him a bit more sort of action economy by making it free action, I think is okay. But yeah, he's getting 2 new keywords, which I've designed just for Tarkin. The first one is Army Intel. So this model may use line of sight of other friendly units when performing non-attack actions. So this would work for command cards, this would work for pulling the strings, this would work for Observe, and this would also work for like Spotter if you wanted to give him some binocs or something. So it doesn't, just to note, the range is still measured from Tarkin, but line of sight, you can use other friendly units. So Tarkin could be behind some line of sight blocking terrain, could be like tucked away quite safely, and then he would be able to like still give out the Observe and the pulling the strings and stuff because he's using the intel of the rest of the army. I don't know how well this necessarily suits Tarkin as like a keyword, but I basically wanted to build Tarkin as a guy who was like kind of tucked away at the back, was really well protected by his army, but was able to still support despite being, tucked away himself. Also getting priority target. I'm not super happy with the name of this one, but basically it just means that he is better defended by models around him. So he can benefit from backup at range 1, and he can back up critical hits. So again, just making backup that bit more useful. And yeah, I think it's a nice thing for him to have, just especially early on, to avoid plink damage and stuff like that. How often this will pay off, I don't really know, but it does just give you a bit more flexibility for using backup. And then he's getting Compel, because I'd already given Cunning and Ruthless to Thrawn, so I didn't want to have like loads of the same iteration of keyword appearing across different models. In terms of his melee, it's bad. It's the 3 white. I think it's Untrained Brawl on hand. Maybe I should try Untrained Brawl. But yeah, 3 white, worst melee in the game. And then his blaster is just pretty generic, 2 red. I think it's the same as Krennic's. Krennic's might be range 3, but yeah, it's a consistent blaster. And yeah, again, if you're using it, it's probably not ideal, but yeah, it's just something he has. And then again, coming in 100 points with the 2 command, the training, and the gear slot. So I think that's a pretty generic and kind of a safe template to have in terms of the 2 command, the gear, and the training slots. Finally, coming to his command cards, I was kind of debating, like, do we build it around the Death Star stuff, or do we avoid the Death Star stuff? And in the end, I've kind of embraced quite a lot of the Death Star stuff. So 3 command cards. First one is, you may fire when ready. This one is way more complicated to word than I originally hoped, and like actually how it plays out on the board would hopefully be very straightforward, but it's quite complicated to write down. So when you play as command card, you can place down 2 orbital strike tokens. I was going to call them Death Star laser tokens, but then I needed a Death Star token for a different one, so it's called an orbital strike, but it is essentially a Death Star laser token. And essentially what you would do is they're like ordnance, but they deal wounds to everything, not just to armor. And they also sort of build up in power the longer you wait. So when you play this command card, you put down the 2 orbital strike tokens. That would be before your opponent resolves their command card effects. And basically, if you fire at the end of this turn, you would roll 3 attack dice, 3 white attack dice for your ordnance attack. If you wait another turn, they improve to 3 black attack dice. And if you wait another turn after that to fire, you get 3 red attack dice. So you're kind of rewarded for kind of planning ahead and letting the Death Star laser charge. I don't know. This is a bit of a reach, but I wanted something that like incentivized not maybe going straight away and just planning ahead, and like maybe just having the kind of like your opponent weighing off whether or not it's worth eating that damage, and you could hold them there for quite a while. But yeah, basically same as Ordnance. Each unit at range 1 of that token after you fire the Death Star laser would suffer 1 wound for each normal hit result, and then 2 wounds for a surge or a crit result. So it's a little bit better than Ordnance. And yeah, I don't know. I think this is quite an interesting idea. I know it's all, so it is friendly models as well. So it's a bit of a payoff. And the other bit of this is you must fire once you reach the red attack dice turn. So you can't just choose not to fire the laser. So if you've misplayed and kind of put them in the wrong spot, or somewhere where your models need to be, you still have to fire the Death Star laser when you reach those red attack dice turn, and you would do a lot of damage to your own models, which I think again is quite an interesting idea. So this is, I think, a bit wacky, and I don't know how well it would play out in game, but I think just having that token there ready to go and would play some real mind games. I think it could be quite a fun command card. And obviously you remove the tokens after you fire. So if you fire after the 3 white attack dice turn, you don't get to fire the black or the red. You would only get the 1 attack from it. And the attack dice would go for both tokens. So when you roll them, it just applies to everything at range 1 of an orbital strike token. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I appreciate it's a bit of a complicated one. Fear of this battle station. So is 2-pip. Units ordered by this card gain Demoralize 2 this turn. So you just get some suppression to give out some fear. And this has a divulge where you're putting 2 Death Star tokens anywhere in enemy territory. So they have to be within enemy territory. And it's whenever an enemy unit begins their activation at range 1, they gain 1 suppression. So they're basically afraid of the presence of the Death Star while they're sort of deploying it early on in the battle. The tokens are never removed, so obviously they'll be there permanently. And I think there's a slightly awkward thing where, like, if you had an FD laser cannon, it would just, and you put it next to one of these, it would always gain suppression. But yeah, that's just quite a niche interaction maybe. But yeah, I quite like this one. Like, I think it's a bit of a different, rather than you may fire when ready to deal out loads of damage, and then Fear of this battle station will kind of give out suppression and kind of maybe control where your opponent sort of moves up through a bit. And finally, Interrogation. So he gets another 3-pip, but a bit like with previous ones, when building a command hand, treat this as though it has 1-pip. And this is a permanent effect. So when an enemy trooper is issued orders by a command card at the end of the command phase, it gains suppression equal to the number of pips on that command card. So obviously this only applies to troopers, won't apply to vehicles, but as soon as you play this down, whenever any enemy trooper is given an order by a command card, it will just gain that many suppression. And I think this does punish some armies maybe too much, and like droids not enough maybe. So I don't know how balanced this would be, but yeah, this could even be like a turn 1 play, for instance. And I think over the course of a game, I think it probably gives out about 10 suppression, which is quite good. Like, your opponent kind of controls which units would get suppression, which isn't bad in a way. And comparing it to, like, I don't know, Krennic's 3-pip, for instance, where Annihilation Looms, which can give out like sometimes 10, 15 suppression, I don't think they're kind of balanced in the same way necessarily, because you also suppress your own guys with Annihilation Looms. But I think Interrogation is quite interesting, and I like this idea of not necessarily Tarkin dealing loads of damage, but having that suppression, kind of having that intimidating effect on your opponent's army with the Death Star behind it. But yeah, those are my shots at Thrawn and Tarkin. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I can't imagine these will be anything like what AMG ends up producing, but I will be pretty pleased if I'm even vaguely close with some of these, because I think especially with Thrawn, there's just loads of space you could go into. I think Tarkin's maybe a little bit more linear, but it will be interesting to see what they end up producing with those. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, etc., and I'll see you for the next one.